Comic Crook family, I can't even be more excited to do this intro today. What we have prepared for you guys today has been in the making since almost a year, since Comic-Con. We have talked about this since episode 1. We have today the legendary,
the mighty,
the almighty, the glorious champion of a comic book writer. And we're so honored and deeply humbled to be here today talking to John Layman.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, man. So the question I had for you just to start off is, where are you from?
Marysville, California.
Nice,
which is
man.
a little farm town about 40 miles above Sacramento.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how was the comic book scene out there?
Well, I'm
At
old.
least growing up.
I'm super old, man. When I was a kid, this is like, pre-internet, and I started reading comics in 1977.
Shit.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, hold on. Somebody spilled something on my laptop. I gotta.
Oh, no problem.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Like my gateway drug was Star Wars. When I was a kid, I'm so freaking old, dudes. When I was a kid, this was pre-VCR. I dreamed of the day, I was this 10-year-old kid dreaming of seeing Star Wars all the time.
Oh,
and once it left the theaters, that was it. And so, I go to my 7-Eleven and I can spend 35 cents and get here's New Adventures of, Luke Skywalker or whatever.
Right.
And,
Nice.
started with Star Wars. And then, there was one day I went to the corner market and, the new issue wasn't out and I had 35 cents in my pocket. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try ROM. I'm going to try, Micronauts. I read the toy stuff, I think, before I got into the superhero stuff.
Oh,
and I've never
okay.
been super hard. I would pick up some DC stuff, pick up some Marvel stuff. I was an X-Men guy as a kid.
See.
Yeah. So yeah, that's we had an episode talk about how essential that it was to our.
Well,
upbringing, so.
you answered one of my questions I was going to ask. I was like, are you going to be a Trek guy or a Wars guy? Because I'm a Wars guy.
And I'm a Wars guy too.
Dude,
So.
but I love both. Star Trek, Star Wars.
Yeah. Lately, I think I'm more of a Trek guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know, man. The last three trilogies, I didn't even the last movie. What was it? The Last Jedi.
Yes,
I only saw once. I never saw it again.
So I got one quick question to ask you here. In a fight, who would win between Captain Picard and Captain Kirk?
Oh, Kirk.
Oh,
Kirk
see.
would.
Yeah. All right.
That was his answer.
Yeah, that was my answer.
Picard would do something intellectual.
See,
he'd try to talk him out of fighting.
My thought is Picard would win in, let's say, like a space battle. But if it's hand to hand, I'm sorry, Picard is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's tactics, it's Picard. If it's
Right.
going for a dirty gut punch,
Yeah,
it's Kirk.
he's gonna give you the double-handed Superman punch. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. So, your first comic books you saying that you read was not superheroes, huh?
No.
Wow, man.
Yeah, and I was never that big of a superhero guy. I remember coming on to X-Men. My first X-Men was 138, which is
Okay.
137 was when Phoenix died, and I literally came on the month after, which was a recap issue.
Jeez.
And then it was still easy enough to buy those issues. I could
Right. Yeah.
there were still some comic. Sacramento was about 40 minutes away, 45 minutes away, and I'd go with friends on weekends to the mall, to kids hung out at malls.
Yeah. Of course.
My generation still did that, but
Yeah,
Mine did too.
And then there was a Tower Records. You guys remember Tower
I
Records?
do. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar,
So
but-
we'd go to Sacramento to go to the mall and Tower Records, and then I'd have my friends hey man, let's go across the street to Sunrise Mall, or Birdcage Walk was the name of the mall, and go to that comic book store. And I was able. I bought X-Men '94.
John.
A song. We're talking $10 or whatever.
That's crazy.
Worth so much more now. Worth so much more now. So what are your what interested you in becoming a writer?
I just, as soon as I started reading comics, age 10, I said I was going to be a comic book writer, and there's never anything else I wanted to do. And so when I went to college, I would write stories. I went to college as an English major.
Oh wow!
Did you really?
That's crazy, writing. Man. Yeah.
And now you can find me. You can find pros. You can talk to them on podcasts. You can talk to them on Twitter, Facebook. But when I was a kid, pre-internet, no freaking idea how to do this. They had a big convention in San Francisco, and big conventions don't, like, it would be smaller than Tucson Con now.
Yeah.
I remember reading stories about the first Comic-Con, like you said. Was it in San Francisco? I think
No. Comic-Con was San Diego.
San Diego.
Okay. But they did have these basically it was a whole hotel lobby with with a couple pros, and then a bunch of old guys with long boxes.
How far they come, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. And I remember just being the snot-nosed kid, and George Perez was there, and I bought like a Teen Titans page from him for like $25. Still got it.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. So for you, like, who was your favorite, like, artist or writer that, like, really, like, inspired you? Like,
okay, this is gonna sound crazy. You guys know Cerebus at all?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I always read some superhero stuff, but I was an indie guy. I was a black and whites, Turtles and
Nice
Beach, and like I was my thing was Cerebus even before I could kind of understand it. And Dave Sim was kind of the he's gone a little nuts since then, but in the 80s he was like this huge proponent of creator owned, like Marvel's going to take your ideas and ultimately screw you.
Right.
And that hasn't changed. But, he was like, make your own thing, have your own ownership. So my whole life, I wanted my Cerebus,
I respect that.
And, I can't draw, so I got to bring an artist on and all that. But it was as close to my Cerebus, and that's what Chew ended up being.
Yes.
64 issues of my thing. And thing about Cerebus, like, yes, it went off the rails. I don't recommend it, but at that time in my life, sometimes I would be reading 12 comics a month or 20. Sometimes I would be reading one Cerebus, but
Right.
that brought me into the comic book store, at least once a month, if not usually once a week. So, I would always go in and, there were points in college when I was broke, or, I needed money for beer more than comics or whatever. But I was always in the comic book store, for that Cerebus. But then there were times when I was flush and, Dark Knight was coming out, Watchmen was coming out, and it was just like this, that was, Watchmen and Dark Knight was senior year of high school for me, freshman year of college.
Yeah, see, that shows it.
Yeah.
So,
sitting in your dorm room, taking a bong hit and like reading crazy comics, like that was so formative on me. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be an English major because that's now you can go to the Kubert School, but what else are you going to do if you write comics and you're in a small town?
Yeah,
that's crazy. Man.
So what you got next, Eli?
So I have, what would you say to upcoming writers as far as advice goes?
Well, don't get in the job for money. Like, you have to be in the job for love, like, because there's a lot of heartbreak along the way. And I was in comics, starting in '95, and Chew was my my quote unquote hit. Where people are like, wow, here's this new guy, John Layman. It's like, well, I've been in the business 15 years, not really a new guy.
Yeah, not new to us, buddy. Not new to us.
So you just got to, you just got to persevere and do it. If you do it for yourself, you'll be happy. If you do it for money or something else, you may not reach that at first, and you're gonna get disappointed. So just I always had the goal to have my Cerebus, my novel, and I got it.
One of my biggest problems is I have these great ideas, and then I write 30 or 40 pages, and then I just put them down and never come back. Like that's
That is a problem.
yeah,
That
that's
is a
one of-
problem. You got to finish.
Yeah, and I have these ideas like, oh, this is going to be the next thing, and I just never do anything with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Well, you know, you recognize the problem. I mean, the problem is,
Yeah.
you know, grab one of them, and you know, writing's hard. You know, writing's not fun a lot of the time,
Well,
and you just got to make yourself do it.
Him and I are working on a quote unquote like H.G. Wells kind of War of the Worlds radio show. It's going to be
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be about a detective, that, you know, your noir classic style, but we're going to be throwing in superpowers.
Yeah.
So like a podcast though.
Oh, in podcast form, yeah.
In podcast form, so
wow.
it's going to be like
Yeah.
a radio comic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's going to have sound
that's,
effects, and it's going to be pretty cool.
You know, that's
So-
kind of what Audible is doing.
Yeah, essentially, for sure.
Well, I fell in love with you know, the H.G. Wells. I love those old radio shows. Like one of the first things I ever listened to was the old Superman radio show.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's weird because podcasts are really just the new radio, you know?
Well, exactly. You know,
And podcasts and Audible and, you know, all the stuff that's, you know, people don't think of it as radio, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
the old time, you know, serials and stuff.
yeah, terrestrial radio doesn't really. It exists, but nobody cares about it anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just drive time. And you know, I think that's for old people who haven't figured out podcasts and you know, they want something to listen to on their commute.
Yeah.
So I do have a question for you. If
Yeah.
you happen to have like they just don't even matter what character, just any character in any comic book universe, and they say, "Hey, we're just gonna let you go crazy." What character would it be, and how would you go about writing that comic?
Oh, so
He's
I
like,
always have a bucket list.
Do you?
Like I always have
Please
like a
tell us.
list of the people. And the cool thing is, in the last few years, man, I have been knocking my bucket list down left and right. I had Judge Dredd on there. I had Godzilla,
Yes.
Mars Attacks, and then
Yes.
just recently, DC's been giving me like little short stories and like their anthologies and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't need an 80-issue Swamp Thing run.
Mhm.
I just want to write Swamp Thing. So I got to write a Swamp Thing story.
Swamp
Got to write
Thing.
a
That's
so
Constantine
awesome,
story. This year
That's
I got
this
to write
guy's
Harley
favorite.
Quinn. So,
Well, my favorite.
and the
sorry.
cool thing, like I did as long as I've written them, that crosses them off the bucket list.
Right.
I did early on. I did a Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness
Yes.
book.
We are aware.
And,
Yes, we're very aware.
We've been
But
waiting
I
to
got
talk
to
about
use
this.
a ton of characters. Like I got to use the Blob. I got to use Daredevil. I got to use Howard the Duck. And so,
What made
like,
you
I have crossed most. Like, I don't know that there's any Marvel characters left on my bucket list.
Man.
My big one on DC that still remains is Firestorm.
Oh, Firestorm.
Like, I love Firestorm.
I like that.
Yes.
And then it's a weird thing. I want to write Archie.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should.
I want to write a Star Wars, or I did, but I understand the licensor is so precious and such a pain in the ass that it's almost not worth the money.
I got you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That makes
And
sense.
then my big holy grail that's left is They Live. I want to write a
Yes,
They Live
yeah.
comic.
Came to kick ass and chew bubble.
Yeah,
gum.
I'm all bubblegum. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. First of all,
And Keith, speaking about H.G. Wells, the take I would do, I wouldn't use Roddy Piper. It would be 2023, and there was an event where this, how at the end of They Live, they broadcast everything on TV.
Yeah.
Well, they're gonna play that off as a H.G. Wells like fake out
Oh,
thing.
yeah, the War of the
Hey,
Worlds.
this happened 30 years ago, but there's still like truthers who sort of believe the
Yeah.
aliens are out, among
yeah.
us.
That's great, man. I love
So
it.
it'd be like a total modern day take.
So I have one that's
take
like,
our money.
Yeah, right. So my favorite comic book character of all time is John Constantine. Have you ever considered maybe what your brain would do with him? Like as far as like a story for him?
I don't think that way. Like
yeah.
when an editor says, hey, you want to write a Harley Quinn story for the anthology, that's when the brain starts working.
I get
But
you.
for me to like sit there and kind of invent stories.
I see. That's my thing. I do that all the time. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean it doesn't go anywhere. So I'd
Yeah.
rather I rather concentrate on my own stuff because I can make that. Like I can have the best John Constantine story in the world. Doesn't mean I can sell it.
Well,
But I can have the best story idea for my own thing, and I can make it happen. So
exactly.
I've got a couple editors in my corner, and they know who I like, and that they're like, hey, you want to write this Swamp Thing story, or what I'll do, they'll typically they ask you for a couple ideas for these anthologies, so I'll just write, I'm going to write a Harley Quinn, I'm going to write, I'm going to give you 3 ideas, and it's going to be my bucket list. I'm going to write, here's the ideas for my characters, but that's at least, I'm not thinking about it abstractly. Like, I know I'm going to get a chance at one of the 3.
Right. In your mind, who do you think would be the best, like, not played already, best live action Harley Quinn, like as like an actress? Have you ever thought about that?
That's tough, because I really like it's one of those things where I'd be happy if Margot Robbie does it forever.
Same. Yeah.
So maybe when she ages out of it, but she's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because that's why I asked you the Swamp Thing, because that made me think of John Constantine, because Constantine debuted in Swamp Thing. So,
yeah.
So
that was also that was another formative thing. I was an Alan Moore kid growing up, and I was reading those Swamp Things. I was buying them on the stands. I remember the first one I bought was the Pog, which I think was Swamp Thing 28.
That's awesome.
Buying it at the corner 7-Eleven.
That's awesome.
That's super awesome. So my other question for you would be more of, so I know we talked a little bit about Chew. I would like to definitely talk a lot more about Chew.
Well, yeah.
What plans do you have for Chew, and where would you like Chew to go?
So we did a spin-off, a CHU book, and it came out in the height of the pandemic.
Oh.
And, no one kind of knew about it. Everyone was locked in their homes. Image made it returnable. You guys know what that is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
When the stores that don't sell it can send it back. So, and it was a good thing that they did. You got to keep the retailers afloat, but we did not make the money on that book that we wanted to. So after 10 issues, we're like, you know what? Let's step back and come back to it at a better time. Okay. And there is Hollywood stuff going on. I mean, there always is Hollywood stuff going on, but there's good stuff going on right now. So I was I think I jumped the gun with the spinoff story, because I thought we'd have something by now, but Hollywood takes forever. So I'm kind of like, the actual Chew, like Tony Chew's story in comics, that's over as far as I'm concerned. We got CHU with the sister. We could always come back with the daughter and spin-off characters, but I feel like Tony's story, I'm not going to do like secret case files of Tony Chew,
Yeah.
I understand.
But yeah, I mean, it's always, I talk to Rob Guillory, 3 or 4 times a week.
That's
and I'm doing something new with my CHU Chew artist. I want to stay with him and kind of build a brand like Brubaker and Phillips. Then once people like our stuff, and are used to us as a team, then we'll come back and do more CHU Chew, because I've got a billion stories about the sister yet to tell.
That's so awesome, man. Like I love that it's such a unique and original character for you. I think it's awesome.
So I have another question, kind of leading up to that. So if there was any character that you feel needs more exposure as far as media wise, who would it be, and how would you go about that? Like, do you think there's like some comic book characters that just are not getting the time and on the TV
you ask me questions, and I don't answer the question. I come back to you with philosophy.
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
I don't think it's the character. I think it's what they do with it. Like, look at Peacemaker.
Yes,
that show was fantastic.
Agreeable. I agree 100%.
Kind of a nothing character. And even look, Guardians of the Galaxy. Even freaking Iron Man was a solid C-lister until
yes, he was.
Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige and Robert Downey Jr. Made something of it.
Well, all those guys are geniuses.
Surprise me. Come up with the dumb Squirrel Girl. It doesn't matter if it's
I love
if
Squirrel
it's done
Girl.
right.
I like Squirrel Girl.
She's kicked the crap out of Juggernaut.
She's kicked the shit out of Thanos, man.
So on that same note, I got a nerd question for you, bro.
Yeah.
Your dream fight. Any universe, any characters, your dream fight. Like two.
I don't think that way.
No, see, that's the way my brain works. So the one that him and
I don't. I know a lot of comic book people who do sit and have those conversations, but that's not me.
So here's the one that him and I have been having is a Lobo versus Wolverine.
Oh,
and we know that there was a series
that it
of
happened,
that. But
I
would like for them to get back at it.
Well, and
but
of course,
again, I don't think that way because to me, it's what the writer can do with it. Because again, Squirrel Girl can beat Thanos.
Yes,
she can.
She-Hulk versus Galactus. That's the great thing. You can make it's comics. You can make the craziest story. So it's really. It's like I don't think that way because I want some writer to come in and do something awesome and surprise me.
It's like Deadpool talking to Galactus till he gives up. You know what I'm saying.
So there's always a way.
Yeah. So you were saying there's some things going on with Hollywood with the Chew projects and stuff like that. If you could do all your casting, if you could do everybody included in the project, who would you have direct a Chew project? What story would you go with? And who would be some of the actors that you put in there?
Oh, I would be as accurate to the comic book as possible.
Absolutely.
We'd start at the beginning and go as far as we could. Did you see the HBO show Warrior?
Yes.
He has.
So I love the dude from Warrior as Tony Chu.
Oh, what? Dude.
Yeah, okay. We're all for it.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I'll post a picture to our page for that.
Chu has been around for so long that at first we wanted the guy who was on Lost.
I
think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the.
I got his face in my head. I can't think of his name.
And then later on, it became Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead.
Oh, I love that.
But the guy I'm thinking of from Lost. Oh, Ken Leung. You look at him now. He was in the Star Wars movies, and he was in something. Old, that freaking M. Night Shyamalan piece of crap.
Shyamalan Ding Dong.
But he's like all gray now. He's 10 years in actor's time. Like he would have been good 10 years ago.
Right,
he's not good now. So the current choice is Warrior. But who knows what it's going to be in 5 years from now.
Nice. So moving on to directors, who do you think, as far as when you watch a movie, you say, okay, the way that they go about it is close enough to your vision on when you do your comics? Who do you think would do a really good job as far as directing your project?
Well,
I know that's a pretty steep question.
I would want it as a cartoon.
Oh,
and the dude that I'm working with right now is the dude I would want as the director, but I can't be any more specific than that.
Okay, all right.
Did you by chance watch the Invincible cartoon?
No, I didn't. It's on the list, and
I thought of it because it has Stephen Yeun in it.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where I wanted to watch it with my kid. He's 16 years old.
Well, okay.
But getting my kid off of YouTube to watch a show with me takes an act of God. So it's one of these shows that I'm waiting for him.
Right.
And it's just kind of falling through the cracks.
Right. So my thing is I'm a huge comic book fanatic, or a cartoon fanatic. I'm sorry to say. After the passing of Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill's saying that he's never going to play the Joker again.
Yeah.
Which I respect, and I grew up with I forget the guy's name that played John Edwards in the JLA cartoon, all that kind of stuff. So for me, cartoons where it hits.
Yeah, sure.
That's let's say when I pick up a Batman comic book, I hear Kevin Conroy's voice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I hear Mark Hamill.
I don't know if you read my detective run, but it was very Batman.
Yes, we have.
Well, you beat me to my thought process.
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. You worked on Death of the Family, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, that is personally one of my favorites. And and then I was like, because I was, we met and we talked and everything like that, and I started looking through the books that I had. I'm like, fucking John's name is in this book. Well,
yeah. Well, it was weird because I had just inherited. It was weird. I wasn't pursuing detective, but Chew was so hot that DC came to me, and they're like, I wasn't even kind of looking for work, and they're like, this editor was talking to me, and I'm like, hey man, let's just talk about our kids, let's talk about our dog, whatever. I'm not, editors just get hustled all the time. Hire me, and it's like, let's just have a beer and have a good time, no pressure. And then the guy called me up a a couple months later, he's like, "Hey, I know you said you weren't looking for work, but if there was something cool, would you do it?"
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course I would. What do you got? And he's like, "Well, do you think Batman's cool?"
Well, yeah.
So what do you say to that? So, Scott Snyder was the dude on Bat. He was on Batman. I was on Detective, and there was like Dark Knight. There's always a few, but like if you were just reading one book, Scott Snyder was driving the ship, steering the ship, and I was cool with that because I had Chew. So my thing was like, hey, I'm just gonna like, I think they're making a mistake hiring me, and I think I'm gonna get fired. So I'm gonna use as many villains that I like before they like wise up and get rid of me. So I told short stories, little 3-arc tales or smaller, featuring as many Batman's rogues gallery as I could. And I got to use Poison Ivy and Clayface and Scarecrow, all the good ones, everybody.
One of my favorites.
That's awesome, man.
One of my favorite Batman scenes of all time is when Joker has the Bat family tied up, and they all have bags on their head, and they've all had their faces cut off. John knows what I'm talking about. He's like,
yeah.
So like that's where my mind went with it. Did you work on that section of that or no?
No, that was pre me.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's what kicked off New 52, right?
I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And because they brought me on. My first issue was Detective 13.
Okay. Yeah.
Tony Daniels, I don't know. He did the first 12 issues, and then they move deck chairs around every once in a while. Like when I left Detective, they came to me like, "Hey, we're pulling you off Detective. It's no reflection on you. We just gotta, there's a churn. We'll find something else for you." But at the time, I was falling so far behind on Chew, and I'm just like, I'm actually glad. Don't hand me another book. DC will always be here, but I can't fuck up my book. The problem was DC's like, "Oh, hey, you want to write this 50-page, issue 900 anniversary edition? Sure. Oh, you want to write an annual? Sure. You want to write Catwoman special, Clayface?" And suddenly, like, I'm doing all this stuff, which is great, but I'm falling behind on Chew, my baby, and I can't screw that up. So eventually, I just kind of like took a step back from DC and said, hey, I got to finish this book, because if I do it right, it's gonna pay me for years and years and years. But there's always 14 people or 1,400 people in a line ready to write Batman. You're not gonna miss me.
On that note, like, so say when you're writing, do you picture panels in your head when you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the key I have found to being a good collaborator is, I will say, hey, five widescreen panels on this page. 3 of them are equal sized, 2 squares on the bottom tier, and and then I'll lay out. But then I'll say at the beginning of every script, hey artist, I'm throwing stuff out at you, but if you've got a better idea, you've got veto power. I'm just saying what's in my head, but please, if you can make it cooler, if you need an extra panel for pacing, whatever, you've got the ultimate authority, and I'll adjust dialogue, if you can make it better.
Right.
So as far as I didn't make a true quote, please.
I think it's kind of newer writers at first that they're too precious. Hey, I wrote this, you have to do it this way, and it's like that you're just a slave driver for the artist. You gotta have them excited to do their most, like, when an enthusiastic artist is doing their best work. You know what I mean?
They're gonna bring what you wrote to a picture. They're gonna.
I mean, if someone's like down on me, oh, Layman's gonna have me change this if I don't do it. Like, if someone's like bummed, you're gonna get shitty work out of them. Make them happy. And the thing I learned, every artist is different. Like, some want to be left alone, some want to have their hand held, some want to talk to you every day. In the case of Detective, Jason Fabach was this new kid, and he was, he's a big nerd, and he just wanted to draw toys. So if I could get the bat plane in one issue, if I could get the tumbler in,
he was
like,
McFarlane,
if I could get, the bat cave, like, if I could just give him a toy to play with, he was happy.
Yeah, he was a McFarlane.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So I mean, you worked on tons of different characters. I mean, you worked with like you had Godzilla, you had Xena, Princess Warrior, you even went over Dredd. What was like the one character? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty, but what was your first character you were kind of given a little bit of leeway to do what you had to do, and you're just like blown away that you even got to mess with that character? What was like your first character? You're like, oh my God.
I think it was probably Xena, because I watched the Xena show, and I did. One of the first things I did was a couple Thundercats minis.
Yes.
And I didn't really care. Like, I didn't watch Thundercats as a kid. I didn't really care. This was a young. I was a young writer that would take anything at this point.
Was that Dogs of War?
But, yeah, Dogs of War and Enemy's Pride.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm proud of them. I did my best, but I'm not like a dyed-in-the-wool Thundercats fan. I kind of appreciate them now more, having written them. But
I'm an 80s
going
kid,
into it,
so.
I just wanted the gig. I just wanted a comic book credit. And then, a few comic books later, I got the chance to write Xena. It's like, oh, I'm actually excited about this. I watched the show. This is, I can nerd out on it. And then, in the years since, the more you build your resume, the more you can kind of, pick and choose what you do.
Yeah.
So, I got to, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. And I also, I was a Mars Attacks dude to the point that when Mars Attacks, when IDW got the property, I was like the first person they called. And they're like, we know you love Mars Attacks. You want to write this book?
That's an honor.
And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, it's with John McCrae. And it's like, John McCrae and I had been friends for like 12 years at that point. So it's like, wow, I get to write something I love with a dude I love. It couldn't be better.
It's a love project.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I've got another nerd question that just popped into my head. I'm sorry. This is how my brain works. Like we're talking about the way your brain works.
Sure.
What do you think is the coolest superpower? Just I'm not going to say what superpower would you want. What do you think is the coolest superpower?
Or on the base of writing.
I think the one I really would like would be to kill one person a day with no repercussions and nobody would know. Nice. That's kind of evil. I think I would really, because I love to travel. I think I would like to be able to just open a door and be in Singapore, and open a door and go to Tokyo.
So with some of my nerd buddies, well, you just be sitting here like you said, hitting bongs and talking about what's the coolest superpower, and like some of them will say flight, some of them will say strength, whatever. Here's the thing: is like something like with strength, you have to have super durability because if you pick a carp above your head, it's just going to crush your body. Yeah. And if you take off and fly at super speed, if you don't have super durability, your body's going to rip apart.
I also think probably not the most powerful in a fight, but like Storm. Yes. We're living in an age of global warming. Like someone like Storm could literally change the world. Oh, there's all these areas that don't, Arizona, we don't get any rain. Like she could literally change the ecology of the world and save the world.
Right, I honestly never even thought about that. That's so true. Yeah.
Well, see, I'm a big DC guy. I'm sitting here wearing a Flash hoodie.
I'm a diehard Marvel fan. I think I've told you that in person when we first met and stuff of that nature.
So my big thing is Superman. Like Superman would be it's really hard to do the right thing. Of course he's the big blue Boy Scout or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think for 99% of the population, you become a tyrant. Like Superman Red Sun. So
great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
And, Superman's there's way more powerful than Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, sir.
So I've been reading the new Superman action comics. It's the one where they give Superman a new power, and now he can transcend time and space.
That's almost godlike, man.
Well, he's like OP as it is. Like he didn't really need that, but
like Lex Luthor, without spoiling the comic at all, takes him into space in a suit, whatever, and Lex Luthor shoots him through time and space in a portal, and then 2 seconds later, Clark shows up and says, these concepts don't mean anything to me anymore, and he touches Lex on the suit, and the suit just comes apart. So
wow!
And then they dissolve.
Where do you go from there, though? Well, that's a real challenge for a writer when you're writing a god.
That's what I was kind of getting at. So what they ended up doing, in my opinion, is what's happening is they disbanded the Justice League. So now the Titans are the main thing in DC from what I've been reading.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like Dick Grayson is the leader of the Titans, and he's the new face of DC Comics. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, like I don't know where I was going on that tangent. I just want to talk to John Layman about Superman.
That's fine.
So I was always a Marvel guy, and I think Marvel has better characters, but as a professional comic book writer, DC treats its talent so much better than Marvel.
Right.
You know, everyone's dying to write Wolverine and all that sort of stuff, and you know, course, I got to. You know, that's cool, but you know, DC. You get better royalties. You get better, like Marvel's got an arrogance to them, especially now with all the movies.
Yeah.
And you know you will hear stories about like, you know, hey, Ed Brubaker brought Bucky back.
Yeah.
And you know the movie came out and he got $5,000 or something that I'm sure they paid their coffee caterer more than they paid Ed Brubaker on these Hollywood movies.
Wow, man.
And they just dropped a Winter Soldier graphic novel, so that should be pretty interesting. But yeah, sorry, I'm a DC.
No, I mean, and actually, what you just told me is actually what you told me at Comic-Con is that unfortunately, Marvel doesn't really take care of their people as much as they should.
And DC's they've been really great to work with.
Yeah. That's awesome. So have you, obviously you worked with like Dark Horse, you worked with a whole bunch of, out of all those companies, what's like the one company that you could say that, and obviously no offense to anybody else, but what is one of the companies that you're like, just anytime they kind of hit you up, you're like, yes, like I can't wait to work with them again. So.
Well, I've had really good luck with IDW. I did that Bermuda book, but I also did Mars Attacks. I did Scarface. I did, there's one other. Oh, Mars Attacks. One other. I don't know. I always seem to come back to IDW, and they used to be Wildstorm. I was an editor at Wildstorm, and then when DC bought them, a bunch of people broke off and became IDW. Now they're mostly gone now, but like I was, those were all my pals, so it was easy to work for IDW because you're working with your friends, but. Everything changes, Yeah, absolutely. Most of the people have moved on, but like IDW has never burned me.
That's awesome. So as far as like working with DC and stuff like that, because I mean, as much as he's a diehard DC fan, I do have a lot of love for DC characters. As much as I'm a diehard Marvel fan, I do. What's like one DC character that like and I kind of feel like I'm reiterating these questions like 1,000 times, but I just kind of really curious your opinion on this. What is it like one DC character that you like? If I can get my hands on him, and if they just get me all like just go crazy, who would it be? Who would you like to mess with?
It would be Firestorm.
Firestorm outside of Firestorm, because I remember you did.
But I also it's my bucket list now. And there's a DC book coming out this year that isn't announced, but I got to like. Tick off a few more off my bucket list. And the even better part of that is it's a book that's not in continuity. And so I'm like, hey, can I kill people in this? And they're like, yeah. So I get to kill like a bunch of noteworthy villains in this, which was awesome.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And then we'll definitely have to get updated with that and talk to you about when those come out for sure.
I think it's being solicited for April. You'll understand why I don't know, because it's kind of dependent on some things.
Okay.
And it's been a long time coming. But awesome. Yeah, it's a really great project.
That's awesome. So this is not Marvel or DC. Like, so this is kind of random. But I am a diehard Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan, right?
We got Power Rangers.
We love that. So there has been crossovers with DC and stuff of that nature.
And
Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. Would you ever do anything with that franchise, the Power Rangers?
I'm a king of weird crossovers. I've done Red Sonja Claw, Red Sonja Mars Attacks, Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness, Judge Dredd versus Predator versus Aliens, Chew Revival. I know there's a couple other crossovers I've done. Outer Darkness Chew. But to your specific question, I'm sure I got at least 10 years on you guys or longer. Power Rangers were after my time.
Yeah. He makes a point.
Yeah.
So like I was born in 1980, so for me, I used to watch Super Sentai.
Okay.
And then that's what the action scenes were taken from. That's a Japanese show.
Oh, okay, and then spliced in with American.
And then we had our American actors thrown in, and they different dialogue. The stories were completely different. And then you can see when they run out of Japanese footage because the suits don't look the same.
Oh, yeah.
So like I said, I was an '80s kid. And I grew up watching. So Power Rangers for me was before knowing how to read. Was my introduction to superheroes.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in a small town. I was born in '67. So and when I grew up, we had 3 channels. Like I lived in I lived in the boonies in a farm town. So I didn't have cable until I went to college. Yeah. And of course, when you're in college, you're not watching much TV.
You're preoccupied.
There's a lot of kind of pop culture that I just missed out on. And then by the time you're a 30-year-old, you're not watching Power Rangers because you're
and still
trying to pay rent.
Yeah. Yeah, but so like what I was talking about with like Super Sentai and stuff like that, just kind of reiterating what I was talking about. It's like, so because I watched the Japanese show, I watched Super Sentai. So I got into these color-coded, powerful characters, and that's what got me into like being into that kind of thing. And then the Turtles came along. You know what I'm saying? So like for me, Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, and then I'm sure I could name off other 10 like Sentai shows. But that's what got me into why superheroes are cool.
So are you a Turtles guy?
Fuck yeah, dude.
I am too, man.
All right, I got a crazy story for you guys.
Okay.
Please lay it on us.
I go to as many foreign shows as I can. Like COVID kind of slowed it down, but there was a point where I was going to, 4 to 6 foreign shows, a year. So I went to Australia, New Zealand, and it's so far and such an expense that it's cheaper for them. They have their sister cons. They fly you out to Australia, put you up for a week, and then they fly you to New Zealand the next week for for the other con. So Kevin Eastman was one of the guests at the show, and Kevin's a freaking rock star wherever he goes. Kevin, I was with 3 other Batman writers, and we get a line, but Kevin has a line that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And what happened was he had these prints for the Australian show, and then he I guess he FedExed them to himself in New Zealand, so because he couldn't carry all that on a flight. Somehow they lost all his shit when New Zealand came around. So what he did was the night before, he went up with all these 11 by 17 art boards and a Sharpie and just drew as many turtles as he could.
Oh my
And he's like,
God.
yeah, the first 50 people or whatever, and he priced it at like 100 New Zealand, which was like $70 American. And so he's like, we see him during breakfast. He's like, yeah, I had to draw this, my arm's killing me, I hope they sell.
Yeah.
And me and the Batman writers, Kyle Higgins, James Tynan, we were the first ones in line to make sure we got like an original Kevin Eastman for $7. I think I got a Leonardo.
Oh my God, John!
Awesome, man.
Well, I saw an interview with him because he was a big Daredevil fan.
Okay.
And that's why the foot is called the foot because of the hand.
Because of the hand.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that's why they were all red to start with.
Oh, okay.
Initially they were all.
You guys know where he's from?
No.
I'm a little flexor, so I'm from Massachusetts. So he's from Massachusetts.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So that's something we take huge pride in. Is the creator of the Turtles is from Massachusetts. So,
I just thought it was amazing. Like here I am in Australia or New Zealand, and I end up getting an original turtle from the Turtles
that's amazing.
Guy. Do you still have that piece?
Oh yeah. I don't get rid of my art.
I mean, realistically, so you said 70, right? He spent 70. That's priceless.
Yes,
that's priceless.
Yeah,
even for just an
paid,
experience,
easily double or triple that.
Yeah.
Don't. I hope Kevin never hears that.
Oh, no. Well, if we're lucky, he will. If we're lucky. And so I've got another one. So I'm a voracious reader as far as like novels go.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite novelist? Do you have a favorite writer?
Yeah, well, I got a few. I love Kurt Vonnegut.
All
I've read
right, yes.
all his stuff,
Yeah.
3 or even 4 times. I collect Frederick Brown books.
Okay.
He's a pulp sci-fi writer from like the 50s. I
Hmm.
mean, he died in the early 70s, but I've got like a huge collection of
Oh,
like
look
I've
at
got
that
an
Mecha
entire
Look at
row
the
Godzilla.
Mecha
just
Godzilla. Look at we're just nerding out about all the icons you got just sitting.
Yeah, we tried to make sure you could see our posters in the background. Look at
here's
that. What a
That's
this is
so
everything
cool,
I've
man.
written, and then this goes down to
See, this is
all the
definitely
Chew
going on
stuff.
YouTube.
Wow,
Wow, John.
man.
And then like I've got a collection of like all my absolutes.
Nice.
And then like I was saying, this is my Frederick Brown. These are all
Nice.
Frederick Brown books, and
Martians Go
some
Home.
of them are like from the 40s.
So, are you familiar? Are you familiar? Oh, look at that Mars Attack
Yeah,
shirt.
I like the shirt, man. Mars
Yeah.
Attack.
Oh, yeah,
So, are you familiar with James A. Corey?
yeah. The Expanse writers.
Oh my God! Yes. So the Expanse is my favorite thing in the world. I've gone through the Expanse series like probably 6 times, and it's just like whenever I'm having a bad day, I phrase it to myself this way, like either whether I go audiobook or picking up the book. Like if I've had a bad day, I'm just gonna dive into the Expanse.
Where did you stand on the series?
The TV show, I don't care for it. It's because Amos is my favorite character, Amos Burton.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So he just doesn't personify that for me. And then
How far did you get in the show?
till they canceled it.
Oh, so you watched it. It just didn't do it for you.
Just, like the actress for Naomi just didn't personify it for me.
Oh.
I did love their patois that they came up with. The Belter patois.
Yeah.
I love that the way they did that for the TV show, and like the little things they added, like the tattoos and like the neck scars from having to grow up with low oxygen and having to wear spacesuits and stuff like that.
They put some neat details in there.
Yeah, but like the Expanse is like I cannot. It's literally like my favorite thing in the world. I have an OPA tattoo.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I went through this whole questioning to ask James Layman if he likes the Expanse.
No, it's all good. So, have you
I call
gotten
him
the?
James Layman. I mix John Layman and
Yeah,
Corey.
I got it.
Yeah, you
I
guys
knew who you were
became,
talking about.
I
one
just got
human-
so
one being.
excited. I just got so excited that he even knows what it is.
So this is kind of like off the walls kind of questioning, but so I got to meet Stan Lee when I was younger, and I was wondering if you ever got to meet him, and what was your experience with him?
Boston Con a couple years ago, my kid was coming, and he was doing signings, and I knew, Stan Lee was in his 90s, and when you're 90, time's running out. So I actually, when they had me be a guest, I'm like, look, I can't wait in a 4-hour line, and leave my table, but I want my kid to get a picture with Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And so they brought me, when Stan got there, they brought me like 10 minutes early, and they kind of rushed me in. They're like, please, no small talk. But I do have a picture with, I don't know if that's meeting, we didn't chat or anything, but I knew that Stan's time was running out, and I wanted my kid to have a picture with Stan Lee. And
That's good.
That's
good on
amazing.
You, man.
So
that's good on you to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So like when I was younger, like I said, we lived in Massachusetts. There was like this karate thing that they were doing, like pretty much like the finals, and like pretty much everybody from different regions who were like the best, they would compete. My brother was one of the people who competed. We were there, and Stanley had showed up, and this is around the time of like the X-Men cartoons and the Spider-Man cartoons and stuff of that nature. And he actually signed some toys. And he shook everybody's hand, and you're the real hero. And I can't even imitate his voice.
Excelsior.
Yeah.
But I could. The reason I brought it up is because I'll never forget that experience. You know what I mean? And he truly made you feel like the superhero. You know what I mean? So
I'd been in comics for so long, and Stan was one of these fixtures. And then once he's gone, you're like, oh shit! I had 1 billion times to actually meet him, and you just assume someone's always going to be there until like Neil Adams. I 1,000 shows with Neil Adams, but we didn't we might have say hello, but we never spent quality time. And I think that's something that COVID taught me, because it was 2 years where you didn't see anybody, and you start not taking it for granted. So when cons started up again, I got people I've been friends with for 20 years. but I don't have pictures with him. You know, I got a lot of great memories with John Cassaday, the planetary artist. You know, he's one of my. I mean, we are great pals. I wouldn't say he's one of my best friends because we only see each other once or twice a year. But it's like, you know, we pick up and we've had great adventures for 25 years together. I don't have a single fucking picture with him.
Yeah,
and
I'm pretty bad.
You'll have to change that.
Well, for the first time tonight, me and this motherfucker finally took some pictures together.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Just, you know, screen cap. You guys are next to each other all the time.
Well, I did that.
That counts
I
as a
did
picture.
that too because we finally like created a page for our content and stuff like that. And we created a Facebook event for our interview with you tonight.
Oh,
and
nice.
People like were like, what?
Yeah. So
yeah, I I've been taking so many pictures these last couple of years that I started my own like Amazon, you know, album of me with other pros.
You know what, man? It's you just never know who you bump shoulders with, and it's always an honor to bump shoulders with particular people and stuff like that. You just never know. You know?
Well, like our meeting, you know, we were. Eli and myself were running the Goodwill booth at Comic-Con, and John, you were across from us.
You were literally across.
And I was like,
that was a good booth.
I was like, Eli, and then you were like, Keith, and I went over there and said hello.
Yeah, because we truly are fans of your comics, man. So like,
well, like I said, Death of the Family is like one of my favorite books of all time. You know, and like I said, I went through it after we talked at Comic-Con, and because I remember you talking to me about writing on Batman and Batman Detective. And I was like, oh fuck! Like I don't know if John, I don't know if you can see it in our screenshot, but that's my books over there.
Oh, okay.
You know, so like that's a couple of your books are in there, brother.
Yeah. So and then a lot of times, so me and him had a conversation, and we're like, you know, it's so crazy that you know, we love these comics and we love these cartoons and we love everything. Like we love all this media stuff, but we don't really get the opportunity to really thank the people who make it all happen. You know what I mean?
No, that's what cons are for, though. You know, I mean,
but you don't get your roses the way you deserve,
brother. The cool thing about conventions is you can find your quote unquote heroes on Twitter and Facebook and at cons. Like I think it's hard to meet the stars of The Expanse or your favorite like rock and roll star, but comics have always been very kind of grassroots and you know we're all sort of on the same team. And a dude that's a nobody, in the line 10 years later, he's like the superstar. And so, my philosophy is, be cool to everybody because somebody could be your boss the next day, or actually you should just be cool to people no matter what. But like in comics, man, everyone, it's kind of like the American dream. You know what I mean? Like everyone's got a shot.
Well, we feel very fortunate. Like we felt fortunate to talk to you that day. Yeah, and him and I get to nerd out with John Layman. Yeah, you know what I mean? So like,
well, that was the funny thing because you were like writing all these things. You're like, oh, what's it take to get you on? It's like, well, just pick a day.
Yeah. Well, because we feel we suffer no delusions. We're no Joe Rogan. You know what I'm saying? So like, I know we finally lined this up with you, and like, I can't even tell you, man, like. He came over 2 hours before it was time to record. We're like, all right, dude, let's do this. Like, all right,
we're very excited
because it means a lot to us, man. It just really does.
It's good for everybody. The fans who do tune in, get to, learn some new stuff and all that. Like, it's a service. You guys are promoting me as much as I'm, helping you. Like,
that's fair. That's
like
fair.
I said, it's all. It's all grassroots. People, except for a few dicks, comic people tend to help each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So like on our side of it, I've been podcasting for about 6 years, and like when you talk to people like, oh, you got a podcast, like everybody and their mother has a podcast. You're like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not easy to do. I've got a full studio here that you're talking to us through. It takes money, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes dedication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be sitting here with you and my best friend and talking to you, it's kind of a culmination of what I've been doing for a long time. For sure. Like I don't mean to be like, oh, John Layman, you're so great, thank you, but it just means a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, it means a lot to both of us, man. Like I had told you like a couple sentences ago, man. I feel that you deserve your flowers, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
You paved the way for a lot of people. And you may not know
it's
that,
weird.
but
So like suddenly I became an old man of comics. You know, I was a scrapped upstart, and then suddenly I've been in the business for 25 years.
I think true success is like, so, you know, it's very interesting because in the beginning when you were telling me, you know, where you came from and kind of like what was going on, it didn't seem like truly the comic book field would be the exact thing you end up doing. It's so interesting that that's what it turned out to be, right? So that's so
I was an
beautiful,
English major, and I ended up graduating from Chico State, which was like this party school in Northern California.
Yeah.
And I moved to San Francisco at first because I was kind of into the rock and roll scene. I was like a radio DJ in college, and I worked at I interned with a record label, and I worked at Tower Records in Castro, and I was living. My friend was a techie, like a road guy who like built sets for, you know, plays, and he was on tour. So he's like, come live at my house, feed my cat, you know, feed the plants and pay my utilities. And so I stayed there for almost a year, and then I got the call like, hey dude, pack your shit, I'm coming home. And,
wow.
And I was seeing a girl in San Diego, and she's like, oh, you know, things are getting kind of serious, you know, maybe you should come down here and you know, we could, you know, try living together. And I'm like, ooh, that's where that Comic-Con is, right? And so I worked a couple like chump jobs for a year or so, and then I got I basically got hired as Jimmy Olsen at the San Diego Union
awesome.
Tribune.
I love that
like
analogy.
I was the mailboy.
Cool. I love that analogy.
Doing the weather page and stuff, but I'd also I'd freelance stories, and I'd freelance music stories and then comic book stories because no one knew anything. And it's like when there was a Spawn cartoon, I'd be like, hey, the Spawn cartoon on HBO is based on a comic. I'll write an article. You know, this Judge Dredd movie is based on a comic book. I'll write an article. And then I would cover Comic-Con every year. And they'd always, you know, when you're at a regional paper, they're like, well, you know, that Jim Lee guy has a studio here, so you got to talk to Jim Lee about what's going on. So every year for, you know, 2 or 3 years, I would call Wildstorm, hey, it's that time again. You know, I'm doing an article on Comic-Con, which was a lot smaller then. And but after like 3 years, they're like, hey, you know your shit. You want to just come work for us?
That's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
So this is actually kind of crazy. I came on, you know, it's comics. You know, if you're like me, and I think you are, you'd do anything for comics.
Yes.
So they brought me on as an assistant editor, and it was kind of a horrible job. And I took a giant pay cut. And after like 4 months, it's like, hey, comics is great, but you know, I'm eating macaroni every day.
Yeah.
And the paper called me back. Like they couldn't find someone to do what I was doing, which was like stock charts and business, you know, pie charts by then. So they're like, hey, come back to the paper and we'll give you a comic book column. And, you know, this was the 6th largest paper in America. And we're talking like 1994. Nobody had a monthly comic book column.
Yeah.
So I wrote that for about a year. And then Wildstorm called me after about a year. And they're like, you know what? We should have brought you on as an editor rather than an assistant. Like, we shouldn't have brought you on as an entry-level chump. You know, we're going to bring you on a little higher. So I came back to Wildstorm, and then suddenly, like, a year and a half later, DC bought us, and I was like, I'm a DC editor. How did that happen?
That's amazing. Wildstorm had a lot of great books. They had a lot of good stuff.
Oh, I edited a lot. I edited Planetary, Authority, did some Danger Girl.
So I read your stuff
Astro
before I
City.
even knew your name. Yeah. I read your stuff before I even before I was even old enough to like care about the writers or the editors or you know.
And then, you know, after about 5 years, like when it was Wildstorm, when it was Jim Lee, who was just like a 20-year-old guy with a bunch of money, like you could walk into Jim Lee and say, hey, I've got this crazy idea. Let's do this. And he's like, yes, that's awesome. Let's do that. When DC bought us, we're like, hey, we got a crazy idea. And it's like, well, we don't really do crazy. Let's have a meeting and fill out a proposal in triplicate, and we got to debate it, and all these people got to talk about it, and then we're going to say no.
Well, like Jim Lee's illustrations are some of my personal favorites. Like his Batman, his Superman.
Oh yeah, Jim's amazing.
You know, he's amazing. Yeah, he's by far my favorite artist that's ever picked up a pencil and done Batman.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Alex Ross? Of course. Stupid question.
Yes, of course.
Stupid question. Like so Alex Ross is
Is he familiar?
Alex Ross for me is like he's one of the guys that inspired me because I'm an artist myself, and so, like when you look at Alex Ross's stuff, it's like how can a human do that? Like,
Well, I was his editor on Astro City, so I would literally, now you just scan an email, but in the old days they had to FedEx you the original art, so I would get Alex Ross covers on my desk and hold them in my hand.
What the hell?
Wow.
What the hell? Because when I was exposed to him, when I was exposed to Alex Ross is when he was doing Marvels.
Okay, yeah, sure.
That was when he did Marvel's Fantastic Four, Marvel's Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. That was like I remember. I'll never forget. I bought the first Marvels I ever saw at a Circle K. It was probably 96, 95, something like that. And that was when Circle K's actually had comic book racks.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was walking by buying my 64 ounce here in my candy bar, and I was like, I need to have that. And what it was the cover of the Human Torch.
One of my very first gigs was Red Sonja Claw, and I liked Red Sonja enough. I didn't really know who Claw was. And they offered me the gig, and of course I'm gonna take any gig at that stage in my career. But they're like, yeah, we got Alex Ross for covers and Jim Lee for variants. And it's like,
what?
Yes,
what?
I will do that. So I got I got a comic with an Alex Ross cover. I got now I also have, because I'm never gonna probably do a book with Frank Quietly or like the Superstar. So I have a bucket list of cover artists.
Yeah,
and,
who would that be?
I got Alex Ross. I got Jim Lee, and I did that Detective 900 where they had like 12 or 20 different covers. There's a Frank Miller cover, so I've technically got a Frank Miller cover on one of my books.
Frank Miller is near and dear to my heart, man.
Yeah,
Frank Miller is like, because like I keep reiterating, I'm an '80s kid. Frank Miller is with the Dark Knight Returns. That's like I still have those books from when I bought them in the '80s.
Yeah, I did one of these, DC anthologies last year, and Sienkiewicz did the cover. Another notch on my bucket list.
One of my other favorites is John Romita and John Romita Jr.
Romita.
I always say that wrong. But the tattoo I have, the Spider-Man tattoo I have on my leg is from Romita Jr.
Oh, nice.
So like that, he's by far, I think, I love his style of like head shape. Does it make any sense?
Oh yeah.
You get like the. Sorry, we're getting notifications here, but because people are tuning into it. But so like the profile head shape of Spider-Man, like when he would turn his head to the side for Romita, that like for me like that's just amazing. And like his take on the Goblin, stuff like that. Quit fucking with stuff. Sorry, John.
That's all right.
So like you're talking about your bucket list of artists, like other than like the people that you worked with, like who was just your favorite? Like not bucket list, like just when you look at an image, can't say Alex Ross, can't say Jim Lee. Something that you looked at, you just think is amazing as far as an artist.
Jeff Darrow.
Okay, all right.
And he did 2 of my Godzilla covers, so that was even better. But yeah, Jeff Darrow, I'm just in awe of his stuff all the time.
Yeah. So are you reading anything right now?
I go through phases. I'm not. I've been reading a lot of old stuff since the pandemic. Like right now, and this is actually going to sound weird. I don't really reread my stuff.
Yeah.
And I said I'm going to reread everything I've done, which, some stuff I haven't read in like 20 years. And so I bought that because I did Fantastic Four House of M.
Whoa, and, name drop.
There's an omnibus that just came out, and of course it's Marvel, so I had to buy it myself. Yeah, but it's $125 dollar book, and it's it's this freaking thick.
I'm like slowly taking off my hat. I'm just kidding.
So I've been rereading House of M. Granted it's got my stuff, but I'm reading everyone's, and it's about 75% good.
About 75%.
Not everything's going to be great. There's a couple writers that I just don't like, and they've never grabbed me. And I read their stuff. Like, everybody. I still don't like you, but it's kind of fun to like revisit this like massive, crossover. Anyway, right. And I got to be a part of it, and like I read my thing. It's like, yeah, still holds up. I'm reading 8 Billion Genies. I tend to read stuff by my friend, like to support my friends. Mm-hmm. Farmhand by Rob Guillory. I read a lot of image and indie stuff still. Okay. And then I went like I bought Tintin, and I've been reading all of Tintin, which there's like 30 volumes.
So I got a question for you. It kind of based off what you were just saying. Have you ever reread some of your stuff and like, you know what? If I had a chance to redo it, I'd probably go about it differently or anything like that. Has that ever?
Oh yeah. I mean, for Chew more than anything, there's about 3 things I would have changed in Chew. Like they're not major mistakes. They don't change the ball game. But if I could have done like, I wish I would have changed this thing. But in general, like I don't have a lot of regrets.
Yeah. That's good. No, that's good. No, the reason I'm asking is because like it's I know they're completely different things, but the concept is very much the same. So like I used to produce, I used to make music, I used to make beats and stuff like that. And at the moment, I'll listen to my beat. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Then like 2 days later, I'll come back and listen to it. I'm like, it doesn't sound that great, man. So I was wondering if that you ever had those moments and stuff like that. So.
I'm pretty good because I've still got the editor in me, and I tend to like I write it and then I move on unless something's bothering me, and then I keep going back. And right. It doesn't happen a lot, but when something's bothering me, it sticks in the back of my head, and I will keep working on it until I get through it.
Right.
Oh, nice. So, is there anything that you would have? As far as where your career goes, is there anything that you want to do particularly that is outside of comics?
Well, I'd love if this Chew Hollywood thing gets
going. I'm on board, man. I need to see some sort of live action version of that, brother. If you're gonna do that or a cartoon, either way.
We've been optioned 4 times, and the last time we were optioned, they did a terrible job with it, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And my philosophy was like, "No, hire someone who's hot in Hollywood, get them to sell it, and then I'll come on." But the person they hired just delivered dog shit, and it's like, this is terrible. Like, you can't do this. You have to change it. And then they wouldn't listen to me. They're like, well, we know better than you. Bye. So when the option expired this time, because the option a company gets it for a set amount of time, and they pay you, and then it comes back to you if they can't sell it. So it came back to me, and then people start circling looking for Chew. I'm like, well, hey, you want Chew this time? I got to be involved. Rob Guillory's got to be involved, because every time we hand it over to someone, they turn it into shit, and at least we can make it as accurate to the comic book as we possibly can, and also get paid. Like, I started realizing these Hollywood people aren't any smarter or better than us. They've got a track record. So yeah. I've got the upper hand. You want Chew? You get John Layman and Rob Guillory.
Yeah,
so
as it should be. And I hate to make this comparison, but I mean, this is a pretty good comparison. So like when they did this is kind of random, but when they did like the Harry Potter movies, they actually had the writer involved with every bit of. Yeah. And to me, that was probably one of the most book to movie accurate movies out of any saga.
Yeah.
So I think the same concept goes here. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because some people, like a couple people, companies or directors would call, hey, we really want you. I'm like, well, you got to have me and Rob. And they're like, well, we don't really want you. I'm like, okay, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because like when it comes to intellectual property, you got to have a sense of almost being arrogant.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way. Like, I'm not letting it go again. Like, I will always be part of it, because when I don't, it's going to be far away from your vision.
Right.
Like, one of the problems I had was, I told you my goal was to have my Cerebus.
Yes.
And I got it with Chew. And then I had this like existential crisis. Like, what do you do when you've achieved your life goal? And
you make a new one.
Well, I thought I did. I did this book, Outer Darkness, which I thought was going to be my next thing. And, arguably, I kind of stupidly took it to Skybound, and sales weren't there, and they just killed it.
No.
And I understand sales, but it was like, give me an ending. Like they didn't even tell me that. I can understand sales, and if they would have said, hey, 12's the last issue, wrap it up, I would be totally cool. But instead, they're like, oh, hey, 12 was your last issue, we're pulling the plug. And it's like, that's a fuck you to me. Yeah. That's a fuck you to the fans.
You don't even get to finish.
Yeah. And so the comic book market has changed. So now when I approach a book, I think of it, okay, I'm going to do 5 issues. Like I probably will never do, I will never do another 60 issue thing like Chew. Like the market just doesn't support it. Like it's almost like there's what we call standard attrition, where the numbers go down every issue. It's gotten faster as sort of attention spans have gotten shorter, and there are too many books out there. You can't afford every book that's out there. There's I feel sorry for comic book retailers because they have this job of trying to predict what's hot and what's going to sell,
right.
And what doesn't, they get stuck with.
Well, like on that note, how do you feel about like digital comic books versus physical comic books? Because my generation growing up, like Stan Lee always said, like boobs are great to look at on a screen, but they're much better to hold in your hand.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also there's been points where my office has just been giant piles of comics.
Yeah.
And once you start getting comics for free, and once you've been like comics for collecting, I don't do that anymore. So I treat my comics like garbage. So it is easier for me to press a button if I'm not sure, and then read it so I don't have the clutter, and then and then I go out, so I read it, but if I really love it, then I'll go out and buy the trade. Like I was a late adopter on Love and Rockets because I didn't know where to start. And then I read all of Jaime's stuff and just fell in love. And then, I got to have it for my bookshelf.
Yep.
So, bought the first few digitally. Digitally is almost the way I try it now, because it doesn't, clutter up my room. And then if I want it, then I buy the most expensive, hardcover or absolute I possibly can.
There you go, man. That's awesome, man. So I think we'll come to an end here, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Let me see if I can show you a couple things.
Okay.
Please do. Please do.
All right.
We don't got a time limit. We just want to burn up your time.
Oh wow.
So
I pressed share screen. Do you see any?
Yeah, we got the Taj Mahal.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, okay. So here's my new book.
Uh-oh.
Is it
In Hell We
exclusive?
Fight. And it's about 3 kids in hell, and no one's ever seen this. This is an exclusive, guys. 3 kids in hell and their little annoying demon friend who find an angel, and they decide to take her through hell and get her to heaven.
We got an exclusive from John.
Wow.
All right.
There's the second cover. There's a third cover.
We didn't get to see the...
Yeah, so we just got a shot of the Taj Mahal right now.
Oh.
So,
did you see the first cover?
No. We got your mouse moving around.
Oh. Well, shit. I don't know how to do this. I thought I was...
Well, either way, we still got an exclusive knowing that this is coming out. If you want to email it to us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't.
Don't be sorry.
It's all right, man.
I don't know why you can only see my
doing that.
my screen. Not.
We appreciate that you're enthusiastic as we are, man.
So I've got this DC. Like everything's gonna be announced soon. This In Hell We Fight comes
In
April
Hell We
or May.
Fight, dude.
My Marvel book comes April or May.
Wow.
Oh shit! And then Tucson Con, I actually landed a gig, which I also can't say, but an editor walked up and said, "Hey, you'd be really good for this." And I'm like, "Wow, it's one of those you ask about bucket list. This character was so far removed from what I ever thought was a possibility to write. I never even put it on my bucket list, but
You're getting us excited.
I'm writing it, and it's a lot. Like they're letting me. He is letting me have a lot of fun with his character.
Nice. Well, John, we got to tell you, thank you so much, man.
You've been such a pleasure, brother. Thank you so much.
You know, I'm down to do this every 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well,
absolutely,
man. And we'll continue to reach out to you. And dude, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Now, are you guys in Tucson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you know, there's a pretty good Phoenix Con on February 25th. Have you seen that thing?
I have. Yeah, I've seen.
Got like
I've got the
Andrew McLean and Derek Robertson, and then you know all the local guys. Like,
well, one thing that we would love to do is because I've got some mobile equipment. Maybe we can come down and sit with you and just talk to you.
Happy to.
Yeah.
You watch The Boys, right?
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about The Boys. I'm so happy you even mentioned it.
You know, Derek Robertson's been my friend for ages, and like just to see like the success of The Boys, like I'd be happy even if the show sucked.
Yes,
you know,
it was
Derek,
fucking amazing.
Oh yeah, each season is like I love it so much. It makes me laugh so hard, and it's so wrong.
I'm one of those comic book nerds that I want to see Carl Urban play Wolverine.
Well, you know, he was the perfect Judge Dredd. Give me more Judge Dredds.
Well, I was going to ask earlier how you felt between Stallone and Urban. And I'm Urban all day. You know, because Stallone came out when I was a teen-ish.
Yeah, I don't think there's any like the Stallone movie's like cheesy. He's got his mask off. Like that Judge Dredd movie is as accurate to Judge Dredd.
Well,
as
it
you
is.
Possibly get.
It is though. You know, it's. Like, I just remember going to see it, having Judge Dredd comic books at a very inappropriate young age.
That's an awesome way of explaining it.
And going to see the movie and like, oh, this is amazing. And I just, Stallone was one of those guys, you know, from my growing up. You know, we had Stallone, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, you know.
Yeah.
So he was
an action hero standby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that Judge Dredd's one of my favorites. It's one of those that I walked out and it's like, shit, I wish I would have saw the 3D.
Yeah,
you know, all that slow motion of the people falling on the drugs and the glass shattering.
Man.
Like that would have been rad.
I just can never get out of my head of the original Judge Dredd movie with Rob Schneider and Stallone are in that like a train. And Rob Schneider puts his hand over Stallone's face. He goes, "I am the law." He's like making fun of him.
All right, Keith, Eli.
Thank you,
John.
Thank you,
Honor talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything you've done in your career.
Great questions, man.
You guys you've been dropping nothing but heat since literally '95, bro.
Yeah. So
I hope editors are listening.
We're gonna hold you to talking to us on a regular basis.
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys, take it easy.
All right, you have a good one. Bye.